Welcome to this episode of Mind Your Migraine. I'm Dr. Tawfiq Al-Sadi, a neurologist, and joining us for this episode, Hadil, who's going to speak to us about her migraines and various triggers to her migraines. Hadil, thank you very much for joining us for this episode.
Thank you, doctor.
Can you tell us more about your migraines? When did you start having them?
I started suffering from the migraine more than 10 years ago.
I'm sure you've realized that some of your headaches are triggered by something. Can you tell us more about these triggers,
Yes.
please?
The triggers was like when it's stressed from the work, changing the weather from the hot weather to the cold weather, and some kind of the food.
Any particular food items would trigger your headaches?
It's the spices food.
Okay. What about drinks? Have you noticed any particular drinks could trigger your migraines?
Sometimes when I stop the coffee or the coffee time in the day, it's late.
Okay. Anything else that you've noticed can trigger your migraines?
When it's outdoor physical activities, like with the sun, yes, I will have my migraine.
What about if it happens that you work in front of your computer, your laptop? Does it trigger more headaches for you?
The longest stay in the computer and the stress on it, yes, it's triggered.
What about if you don't have good night's sleep? Have you noticed, for instance, if you stay up late with your friends, that the next
Exactly.
morning
If I
you would
don't
have more headaches?
Yes, if I don't have good sleep, I will have the migraine in the morning starting with me.
Out of these triggers, what was the most troubling one of these triggers?
The stress,
Okay.
stress, it's more.
Well, Hadil, I'm sure with the 10 years history that you had with migraines, you probably can recall some of the time where you had missed out on events, social event, or important meeting because of your headaches. Can you tell us more about one of these events, for instance?
Yep. Sometimes like when I have a big conference at work and we were prepared long time and it's very important conference, like the stress is coming on, I cannot sleep well. Sometimes when we have a family big occasion and we need a lot of stress preparation, I have a lot of preparation for it. The stress, it's triggering me like very quickly, cannot sleep, cannot focusing any more on these events.
The most commonly encountered triggers from pretty much from all patients are stress. So stress, whether it be at work, at school, and the family. So stress is a big factor to trigger the headaches. Then we oftentimes see patients having headaches as a result of direct sun exposure, because of changing in weather, or because of fasting or skipping meals. These are some of the common triggers for migraines. But again, that vary a lot from one patient to the other. For instance, some patients can have their headaches triggered by certain food items, others by certain drinks. So it really varies a lot.
Are all the patients are aware about their triggers?
Unfortunately not, unless you basically discuss it with every patient and try to enlist some of their common triggers. Then you may find out that some of the patients are even not aware that drinking this or eating that is triggering their headache. So you need to discuss it with every patient to understand what can be the main triggers for their headaches.
Are all the patient doctors have the same impact for the triggers in the migraine?
Not really, because there are some patients who may have triggers that elicit or provoke bad headaches. Others may have triggers that can provoke or can result in minor headaches. So it varies a lot from one patient to the other.
Doctor, what is your advice for the patients that they have their migraine and they are not aware about it?
Well, the most important thing, try to remember every time they have an attack, to go back a day or two before the attack to try to understand what could have been the main trigger for the headaches. Was it a certain food item? Was it a certain drink? Was it because they were not happy with work? Was it because they were not sleeping well? Was it because they were working too much in front of their computers, laptops, or cell phones? So they try to always go back and see what could have been the main triggers for the headaches. That would help us a lot in order to try to help them manage their migraines.
Doctor, you mentioned that the stress is the most trigger for the migraine. How we can deal with this?
That really varies from one patient to the other. But I always recommend relaxation technique. Biofeedback sometimes can be quite useful technique to help patients whom stress is a big factor for their migraines, as well as it's always important to speak to a friend, someone you trust. And if the stress level had become so high, then you probably need to work with a psychologist that can help you cope better with your stresses.
Do the people in the UAE suffering different triggers from the other countries?
Well, what we have noticed that in UAE, we have basically found out that the change in weather and direct sun exposure are some of the main triggers for the migraines as compared to other countries. You know that in certain time of the year, in certain seasons, especially in UAE, we have seen increasing number of worsening headaches or worsening migraines, mostly related to the change in weather because of increasing humidity. And that comes again in certain times of the year, especially towards the summertime. Thank you very much for joining us on this episode of Mind Your Migraine. Our guest today was Hadil. I'm Dr. Tawfiq Al-Sadi, and I look forward to welcoming you all for future episodes.